Hi, I'm Rochelle, and you're listening to Box F1 Pod. Today we're going to catch up on the entire F1 summer break, everything that's been happening. We're in full swing. We've got a month off total, and then there's the 2-week obligatory shutdown that we're right smack in the middle of. And it's when no team's allowed to do any work at all. And it's literally prohibited by the FBI. By the FIA. Anyways, naturally, the F1 drivers have gone peak European rich boy. We've got yachts, trips to Africa, more yachts, and a touch of rural America. But in the first few days of the summer break, we also got a lot of cross-team drama. And you know I live for financial, relationship, contractual tea. So really excited to get deep into that. But before we break down all that drama, let's recap the summer break so far. It's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1, summer break superlatives. So everyone's been super busy this summer break, and I would know because I straight up have a table outlining every driver's activity, which sounds creepy, but I'm trying to deliver facts here, so it was a necessary evil. But instead of reading that table top to bottom, which honestly probably would have been interesting anyways, we're going to break down these trips and activities by superlatives. So, first up, most unique trip. Considering nearly every single driver is on a boat, or on a beach, or on a boat that's by a beach, we have got to shout out those people that are willing to step outside the status quo. Clearly, it's no surprise that the driver to step on out of the quo is Lewis. He went on a trip through Africa to, quote, trace his roots, as he explained in his Instagram post. And I've got to say, the pictures are gorgeous. Outfits are excellent. I really think that I can appreciate Lewis's outfits more when they're not in an environment where everyone else is in a team kit. Like, they stick out so intensely in those situations, and when they're in, like, these beautiful shots, or when he's, like, in different scenarios, I can really appreciate what he's doing, and he looks great. So, Lewis wins for most unique trip. Next up, most wholesome. And I have to commend, most of the drivers have done something relatively wholesome. Lando, Max, Checo are all with their family. Carlos seems to be mixed, some with his family, some with friends. And he usually does do his summer break with the family, so if he's with friends right now, he will be with family later. But most wholesome goes to Mick, who seems to be on a family trip in a very subdued tropical area. It's kind of stormy. And then he posted a very, very cute picture where he's clearly playing with his dog. And honestly, anytime Mick Schumacher is involved, he automatically wins most wholesome. No contest. Just ever. If Mick's there, it's automatically wholesome. So win goes to Mick. All right. Next up, most beachy. F1 drivers love their beaches, but I'm giving this one to Pierre because of his caption. So the picture is just Pierre, like, looking out over the view, and it's the back of his head, and the hair is all ruffled, like, ooh, summer hair. Don't care. And the caption reads, love a Greek escapade, Pierre, Pedro, and now call me Petros, referencing to that one Spanish newspaper that referred to him as Pedro Gaseoso, and it will forever be iconic. Also, how many languages can you say Pierre in? Pierre, Pedro, Petros. What's left? I'd like to fill those in. Anyway, next up, most shirtless. So this obviously goes to George Russell, forever and always. George Russell is too shirtless, like Mick is too wholesome. George has now posted 2 shirtless pics since the summer break kicked off. The second of which is him on a boat that he captioned, "All aboard, Captain." And to no one's surprise, Alex commented, "Captain Shameless." And I'm going to be honest, as much as I love Alex's online banter, and Alex has got great social media game, I think we should all strive to be shirtless and shameless on holiday. So good on you, George. We should all be like George. Okay. Also, apologies if you can hear my dog barking in the background. I don't know if it's just me, but if it's translating, I apologize. She's normally quite quiet, but then something will rile her up, and there's no stopping her. Anyway, moving on to Best WAG, which might be my favorite award of the night. WAG, for the uninitiated, stands for Wives and Girlfriends, generally of athletes. And one thing we love here at Box, aka me, is a bit of role reversal. And we've got 2 WAGs on the grid. First up, we're going to talk about Valtteri, whose girlfriend, Tiffany Cromwell, which sounds like, well, I know exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to reveal my age and how lame I am, but all I can think of when I hear Tiffany Cromwell is Halloween Town from Disney Channel. That was an excellent Disney Channel original film. Anyway, Valtteri's girlfriend is a professional biker, and I've got to say that as far as WAGs go, these are pretty, equal WAGs. They WAG each other all the time. They're very supportive is what I'm trying to say without sounding gross. So Tiffany's almost at every single race. Actually, I think she's at every race. And Valtteri's almost at every single one of her competitions in between breaks and in between races. He's always there supporting her. Most recently, she competed in the Tour de France Femme, which is the Tour de France for women. I hope you like that translation. So first is Valtteri posted a lot from the event and was hyping women's sports up a lot. He was really excited that there's that women's sports are getting more exposure and that it's becoming bigger and everything. And he posted a ton of pictures from the event. And my favorite moment was there's a video of him standing on the side of a dirt road and handing her a water bottle as she drove by. And that's just ultimate WAG behavior. Love to see it. So we stand a supportive man. We stand a man who loves female sports. And that is Valtteri Bottas in a nutshell. All right. Next up, Alex Albon, whose girlfriend Lily is a professional golfer and really just stunning and sassy and wonderful all around. And he posted possibly one of my top favorite posts ever. It was a carousel of pics of him supporting Lily at her tournament. And the first picture is of him goofing, holding up a banana to the camera. I can't translate Alex's dorkiness through the audio, but it was dorky Alex holding a banana. And, the caption read, "WAG life ain't a joke. Hashtag banana duties. Hashtag peak potassium performance." Now, this post is so excellent on just so many levels. A, the content. B, the caption. C, the hashtag. When you nail your hashtag game like he did with peak potassium performance, you've really got your social game on lock. And Alex Albon is really funny, and it shows, and I just loved this post so much. Also, Latifi commented saying, "We've established that you're a hab, haha, aka husbands and boyfriends." But I'm going to overrule Nikki on this one and say it's just WAG for everyone. We don't need to come up with gender-specific ones. It's WAG. End of. All right, moving on to Best Yachtie. Lil Yachtie. By the way, shout out to any boxes that watch Below Deck because every time I see them on a yacht, all I can imagine is what the crew is saying and what the crew is doing and like who's the captain and are these guests rowdy or are these guests fun? Like, remember last year when Lando posted that like Mexican themed party on his yacht and everyone freaked out because they were wearing sombreros and stuff? All I could think of is who was the crew that organized that event, because they're probably a little more at fault. They planned the whole thing. I can imagine them calling on land and being like to the provisioner and being like, hey, I need 10 sombreros. Could you provide them for me? And then they did. And then the rest is history. So would be very curious to find out more about the crew and the interior that operates an F1 yacht. Anyway, back to regularly scheduled content. The Best Yachtie award goes to Charles Leclerc, who posted such an intense thirst trap of him on a boat that at Formula One Game, which is the official F1 video game account on Instagram, commented, "Everybody stay calm." And then Puma Motorsport responded, "We are really trying, but it's difficult," with the sweaty face emoji. And if you can send a video game into a tizzy, you're really doing something right. And we already knew Charles was doing everything right, but like, Charles doing it right on a boat is just a whole other level. All right, next up, biggest DJ slut. This is a big topic that has bothered me for so long, and me and my friend discussed this the other day. But there is like a very odd relationship between F1 drivers and European DJs. It's like they've like all got their own personal DJ. Like, do you get one assigned to you when you become a driver? How do they have this connection? What is like the mutual obsession between DJs and race car drivers? Don't know. But the two most significant relationships that have always been at the forefront of this weird phenomenon is Max Verstappen and Martin Garrix. That is not how you say his name. Martin Garrix. They're both Dutch. And then there's Lando and Kygo. And we got a little incestual this summer break. Here's like a rundown of what happened on social. So Kygo posted him and Lando on a night out, and Lando like took over the DJ booths for a bit. And then there's also like a really good picture of Lando clearly like post-shot grimace where he's just taken like a vodka shot, and it was disgusting for everyone, but specifically for Lando, who hates alcohol. And then there was a picture of Kygo, Max, and Lando on a night out, all with matching palm tree necklaces. And I was just like, won't Max's DJ get sad? Where's his necklace? But like, it ended up being okay because like just a few days later, Lando attended a Martin Garrix show and Max was also pictured with Martin. So I'm glad all the DJs are getting equal love from Max and Lando. But the pressing question here is, does Martin have a matching necklace? Does he? Does he want one? He should have one. Someone get him a palm tree necklace stat. Anyways, in conclusion, I can't pick the biggest DJ slut, so Max and Lando tie. Next up, Best American Joe. So both Daniel and Valtteri have ventured into rural America this summer break. Valtteri's in Colorado for one of Tiffany's cycling competitions. He posted an absolutely glorious photo of him atop a giant red tractor, bucket hat in tow, with the caption, "Howdy," and the American flag. It's simple and it's perfect in every way. Daniel posted a picture of him in like a bowling shirt with the words Big Rick on the side while blowing a bubble gum and captioned it, "Montana was a popping time." Both excellent content. And I would love the Big Rick shirt, the Big Rick energy shirt. Well, I think the energy is implied, but I would love that shirt. And I really think Daniel was meant to be American, so maybe I'm just conditioned to it by now. But I really think Valtteri takes this one. It's It's honestly like Valtteri was born to wear a bucket hat while straddling a red tractor. It's just where he belongs. So Valtteri wins biggest American Joe. Next up, best at playing dumb. Esteban Ocon posted a picture of him from a hammock and captioned it, "Been off my phone. Anything going on?" So if you've been following the drama, you know this is hilarious because Alpine basically imploded over the course of like 3 days. And then after everything died down, Esteban randomly posted this. But if you haven't been following the drama, then you're about to get the lowdown once I finish the digital warm-up, and you too will find this hilarious. Last but not least, best at inadvertently causing drama, then dipping. Seb takes this one. His retirement was promptly followed by everyone losing their minds and making the oddest career moves and PR decisions possible. But Seb just like calmly started on Instagram, posted his black and white cute little retirement videos, and then just stepped back and disappeared while the drama unfolded. So thank you, Seb, for bringing us the drama, whether it was intentional or not. We love a pot stirrer, and you stirred this pot. You were a catalyst, whether you meant to or not. So thank you. You get the best award of all. Okay, lap 2, magazines. There have been a lot of magazine features. Guan Yu did like 3 spreads looking like the product king he is. He belongs in a magazine. Daniel was on the cover of Men's Health looking really great despite the magazine cover being designed by like a 5th grader using Microsoft Paint and featuring copy that seems to be just someone's notes copy and pasted onto the cover. But those two aside, we're going to focus on 2 specific articles, Lewis for Vanity Fair and the Ferrari Boys for GQ. So first up, Lewis Hamilton for Vanity Fair. First of all, it was a really good article, and it was a really great reminder of how unique Lewis is to F1 and how absolutely insane his accomplishments are in F1 and in sport in general. And also being the only black driver in the sport is a very heavy thing to carry while continuing to set record after record. Like, he's a GOAT through and through, and I think the article did a really good job of highlighting that. I also think the article did a really good job painting the picture of like how he felt during Abu Dhabi and afterwards, and how it really making you resonate with how it felt for him. And like, he's never properly discussed it before, and it's just like a reminder of how truly heartbreaking the whole thing was for him and just in general, and like what kind of person it takes to come back from that in the way that he did. And also, he's come back to like not so great of a season, and that he's still able to stay in a particular mindset and to operate in a way that only a specific caliber of person can do is exceptional. He's straight up an elite athlete, and like they're on a completely other level. So I like just really wanted to say that because there's some parts of the article that I kind of want to make fun of, but I do want to mention the fact that I really appreciate who Lewis is, what he's done to the sport, who he is as an athlete, and who he is as a person, because he's great. But some of the article made me want to lull, so we're gonna lull together. The beginning of the article immediately kicks off with like quite the statement for Lewis. He says, "I didn't feel like I was welcome. I didn't feel like I was accepted. God knows how many of these drivers say, this is not what a Formula One driver is. That's not how you behave. This is not how you do it. Tattoos? No. A Formula One driver doesn't have tattoos. A Formula One driver doesn't have a personality. And piercings." I get what he's saying. There's a lot of basic-ass people in Formula One, and there's certainly a lot of people that don't have tattoos or piercings in F1, although may I remind everyone of Kimi Räikkönen. But the way it's said really makes it sound as if he's saying no one else has a personality. Also, it sounds like the definition of a personality is tattoos and piercings. I know he's not saying that, and I know he is a very unique personality to F1. It's not been seen that often, or at all. And there's a lot of very vanilla drivers out there, but they all have a pretty great personalities, I think, bar a couple that I will not explicitly name. But there's people who love to dress up. There's people who are really funny, who have great banter, who are really smart. There's just such a variety of personalities amongst the drivers at F1. And to say that an F1 driver can't have a personality, okay. It's aggressive start. This is like the second sentence of the article. But obviously I don't think that's what he meant, but it does read that way. And then what killed me was his description of Pipe, the song he did with Christina Aguilera, which, by the way, when I talked about this a few weeks ago, I thought that was going to be the first and last time, and yet it keeps popping up. So the article talks about how he like loves music and how it's his passion, but he's never like properly like recorded or like released anything other than one exception, which was his appearance on Christina Aguilera's song Pipe, which he like wrote and recorded it on his own, and he didn't want anyone to know it was him because he wanted people to hear it without judging the fact that it was him. And his quote is, people say, oh, Lewis Hamilton's doing music, oh, I'm sure that's going to suck. It's only when they hear stuff that I do that then they're like, oh, you're actually pretty good. Who? No offense, Lewis. Like, it's so cool that you're able to pursue your passions and like do fun projects and stuff. But who said Pipe was good? Who? I don't think anyone said that. Not good for Christina Aguilera's song, and certainly not good as a feature. It was just like an auto-tuned thing. But, okay. Sure. Maybe someone did say that. And the last thing that I like really enjoyed was that Tom Brady contributed some quotes. And one of my favorites was, I think he's an artist. I think when he sees the racetrack, he sees it differently than everyone else does. Like any great athlete, you have your unique way of doing things. Everyone else looks at something one way, and you look at it a different way. And you create strategies and you execute under pressure in ways that other people can't. I just think he probably sees lines on the track that no one else can see. Love Tom Brady. Love this take on Lewis. Love the quote as a whole. But the last sentence, I just think he probably sees lines on the track no one else can see. Lol. Like, it's a great sports movie quote. It's like really, it sounds cool, and I'm sure Tom Brady was super proud of himself once he'd said it. But, if that were the case, Lewis wouldn't be getting any infractions for exceeding track limits. You know, no warnings like the other drivers. But I don't think Lewis is seeing lines on the track that no one else is seeing. Like, it sounds fun, but not particularly accurate. Anyway, it was a great article. Y'all should check it out. Moving on to the GQ article. So Charles and Carlos were on the cover for GQ, but if we're being honest, Charles was on the cover for GQ, and Carlos Sainz was a contractual obligation GQ couldn't escape. At least that's how the article read. But first off, from the bat, I have to say the pictures are stunning. Charles is gorgeous. Carlos is hot. Great photos. They really should have stopped at the photos. Let's break down the article. First, there are the descriptions of Charles. Leclerc's famous good looks are sleeker and more polished than those of his teammate. You can easily imagine him as the prioritized singer in a boy band. I agree. Charles is clearly the lead in a boy band, but... Okay, next up. Leclerc is boyish and enthusiast. And were Leclerc to win the title for them, you feel sure this kid would do it with qualities much lacking in Maranello, a bit of cheek and an appreciation of F1's absurdity. Alright, now let's read the descriptions of Carlos. First one, a mild and polite Spaniard. Because everyone wants to be described as mild. Next up, this one is probably one of my favorite. Sainz is more modest and lightly brushed by melancholy. Lightly brushed by melancholy? When has Carlos ever been lightly brushed by melancholy? He's not Eeyore. And then, while Ferrari insists that they do not have a number one driver, it appears to those on the outside that Leclerc is the preferred son, and Sainz, older by a few years, must play sidekick. Okay. And the last one, you ache for Sainz, though. Do we ache for Sainz? I'm pretty sure we ache for both of them, dude. Have you seen what Ferrari is doing to them? Have you heard Charles's heartbreaking no? Like, regardless of when this was written, they kind of take turns in suffering, or they're both suffering at the same time. But, like, they're never, like, miles away from the other. You know, they're both kind of on equal levels of suffering. And I also actually think that Ferrari continues to be pretty equal when it comes to the drivers, unlike other teams. Anyway, moving on to the rest of the article, whoever wrote this goes hard for F1. The way some of these things are described reads more like a smutty fan fiction than like an article written about two of some of the best motorsport athletes in the world. This quote, here we go. They're greeted warmly by the crew of vets, pulled close, chest against chest, as though they have their hearts steeled for the remainder of a season that's on the brink. Leclerc cannot help himself. He wanders over to the gleaming 67 Racer, that beautiful, hopeless car that never won anything. With sympathy, having everything to prove himself, he strokes a hand over its polished body. What the fuck? Okay. In the spirit of dramatic language, the final sentence of this article. On the airport concourse, there's a Ferrari store that has a family of mannequins in its window, each wearing a team-branded bomber jacket, each gazing out in the direction of the runways. They look as if they're holding their breaths too. That was the end of the article. So, a peculiar read from start to finish. Also, Charles reshared this article, and needless to say, Carlos did not. I do not blame him. They did him a vast disservice. I would actually go further and argue that they did everyone a disservice, but Carlos especially. Anyway, that concludes our digital warm-up. Do-do-do. All right, on to the drama debrief. First of all, I don't know if you guys have seen this term around, but this time of year is called the silly season. The silly season is a time period in sports, usually in between seasons, when rumors, speculations, and wild moves are made, like RE transfers, contracts, etc. And F1, this obviously happens during the summer break, which is mid-season. It'll often overlap with the end of the first half of the season and then carry over into the second half. Last year, if you remember, it was the whole Valtteri George Toto situation. This year's silly season seemingly kicked off in like full swing first day of break, and it was wild from the get-go. Because like last year, we all knew the whole Valtteri George Toto situation was happening way before, and they kept promising and promising. This year, some people had thoughts, but there was nothing sort of like actively being discussed, so it kind of came as a shock. So a lot of this stuff was going on behind the scenes and started coming to the surface just like at the beginning of the summer break. A lot isn't confirmed, a lot is still speculation, but I'm gonna do my best to walk y'all through this drama so we can be prepared for what's to come. First of all, let's start with the timeline. My timeline starts Thursday, July 21st at the French GP press conferences, because during these press conferences, Sebastian Vettel insisted that he's not done with F1, and in fact, he was really insistent on the fact that he wasn't going anywhere. Wednesday, July 27th. This information came to us after. I'm filling in the gaps on this timeline, but later on, Aston Martin claimed that Seb informed them Wednesday evening that he would be retiring from F1. And up until now, they believed Seb would be remaining on the team and in F1. This was all going on like behind the scenes. We didn't know this was happening. Now we know this was what was going on Wednesday night. Now, Thursday, July 28th. Social media. Seb creates an Instagram. Seb posts a black and white video about his plans to retire. Everyone in F1 cries. Very sad. Very bittersweet. We have our little race in Hungary. It's all good. It's all nice. Nothing else happens. Monday, August 1st. The internet. Aston Martin announces via press release that Fernando Alonso will be joining Aston Martin for the 2023 season with a multi-year contract. Fernando confirms this via Instagram. This would mean that Lawrence Stroll was working hard between Wednesday evening and Monday morning. He was hard at work. He wasn't chilling. He was signing. Tuesday, August 2nd, the internet. Otmar gives an interview where he says that he found out about Fernando's move to Aston Martin via press release. His quote was, "I haven't talked to him since he's on a boat. I think in the Greek Isles somewhere." Lolsy comment from Otmar. Dick move from Fernando to like drop this and vanish, not to tell his team, but also kind of hilarious. Later on this day, Alpine announces via press release that Oscar Piastri is joining the team for 2023. We'll get a bit more into Oscar Piastri in a bit, but Oscar Piastri is a reserve driver for Alpine. Now, the language used in this press release was weird and it was vague. The quotes were like, Alpine now looks forward to seeing the next stage in his F1 career alongside Esteban Ocon. This press release doesn't mention the word signing. It doesn't mention money. It doesn't even include a quote from Oscar, which is weird. And also really bad PR form. There was no comment from Oscar for ages. It was 2 a.m. in Australia, which is actually where Oscar is from. And if you Google Oscar Piastri right now and take a look at him, you will be equally as shocked as me that he is Australian. Anyway, no comment from Oscar, 2 a.m. in Australia, so maybe that was the reason we didn't hear anything from him. That wasn't the reason, because later that day, Oscar tweeted, I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I have not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year. Period. Full stop. End of conversation. Now, this was weird. No one would reject a seat, especially one as decent as an Alpine seat, unless they had another offer lined up. So the rumor mill began to turn. So these are the rumors, partially confirmed, partially not, but none of the major parties have actually spoken out about it. So it turns out that Oscar Piastri apparently signed a contract with McLaren for the 2023 seat. However, Oscar still has an active contract with Alpine. Of course, Alpine's first move was to try to prove that he breached his contract. But the FIA, prepared for situations like these, has a contract recognition board. And that board met, and they have determined that both contracts are valid. And now that board, which is comprised of third-party lawyers or something, that have no interest in the matter whatsoever, they will decide which contract Oscar must adhere to. But for now, it is TBD. Now, as always in F1, conspiracy theories have been brewing. One of them has been floated around by Otmar himself, who claims that there might have been foul play afoot. So, this is the breakdown of the theory Otmar is proposing, and actually Reddit also proposed, but anyway. Alright, Mark Webber, former F1 champion and Aussie, which is not particularly relevant to this story, but I felt like it was important to let y'all know he is Australian, and he looks Australian, unlike Oscar. Anyway, Mark Webber manages Oscar. Mark Webber is also friends with Fernando Alonso. Fernando's manager is Flavio Briatore, which everyone seems keen to point out, but I've yet to determine why they keep pointing this out. From what I can conclude, it is simply because Flavio Briatore is an asshole. Alright, so Otmar's statement on this conspiracy theory. Look, I have no record of it, but this is Formula One, and maybe in a couple of years someone says that they have evidence of shared information. I would not be surprised. That in Formula One, you have to act as if everyone knows everything, that there are no secrets in these things. When you ask someone not to say anything, they act like everyone knows. That's how I've run my business in Formula One for 25 years. And if this information sharing has happened, you should not be surprised. I find this hilarious for one particular reason, and that is because in the 2 days prior to him giving this quote, Otmar has been very publicly shown that he did not know very major things happening within his own team. So if you've been operating your business for the last 25 years as if everyone knows everything, you didn't know diddly squat, Otmar. Maybe there's a group chat you're not a part of, but I don't know how you missed these two big things. All right, another part of the rumor mill is McLaren, and it's pretty much a substantiated fact that Oscar has a contract with McLaren, especially because the committee have sort of acknowledged that they're both valid contracts. But the first part of this puzzle in terms of McLaren is Zak Brown, and I'm not gonna claim to fully understand this, but Zak Brown has been hard at work. So Zak seems to have a thing for signing young drivers. Clearly it went well with Lando, and he would have kept Carlos if Carlos didn't go to Ferrari. Carlos left, though. They brought in Daniel. Daniel is not doing so hot, and obviously it's because he's old. Or that seems to be the train of thought over at McLaren, because Zak decided that that was the reason, and the only other solution is to groom other Landos. And so Zak began shopping amongst all the young drivers in the racing world to see who could fill Daniel's car, which it seems that the McLaren team views as basically a stationary bike at this point. So it turns out that Oscar wasn't the only guy that was offered a seat too. Zak decided that there's really no place like home, I guess, and so he headed stateside to try to recruit some IndyCar drivers. Apparently, the seat was offered to Colton Herta, Alex Palou, and Pato O'Ward, all IndyCar drivers, and Pato O'Ward's actually on the McLaren team. But none of them made the cut, I guess, and the offer went to Oscar. But, interestingly enough, in parallel to all this happening, there was a very similar situation happening over in IndyCar, shockingly, involving Zak Brown, who was in a dispute for the driver Alex Palou, and where he would be driving next year for IndyCar. McLaren claimed that he was theirs, whereas Palou's current team claims that he's driving for them. For a while, Palou was saying that he's really happy where he was and he wasn't planning on going anywhere. But a few months later, when his team announced that he would be returning for 2023, he basically pulled an Oscar Piastri, Oscar Piastri pulled a Palou, and Palou made an announcement that he never authorized that statement and he wasn't going to do that. And so now this whole situation is happening over in IndyCar as it's happening here. Both situations involve Zak Brown. So clearly it seems like Zak Brown has developed a move. And that move is not only transcontinental, but it's messy AF. Zak Brown is just causing a whole bunch of shitstorms all over the world with all these drivers that he's signing or trying to sign. And it's a hot mess all over the place. Honestly, never expected this from Zak Brown. Not gonna lie. But here we are. The final person in this McLaren puzzle is Daniel. And it seems like Daniel actually didn't know any of this. Until all these rumors started coming out, he was none the wiser. In fact, it's a few weeks ago, at the beginning of July, McLaren made him put out a statement saying, I am committed to McLaren until the end of next year and I'm not walking away from the sport. Appreciate it hasn't always been easy, but who wants it easy? I'm working my ass off with the team to make improvements and get the car right and back to the front where it belongs. I still want this more than ever. McLaren doesn't, apparently, because now Daniel's future is uncertain. And he seems to have found out, like Otmar, via press release. And so now it's being rumored that he's requested a $20 million payout from McLaren for basically voiding his contract. And honestly, he deserves that payout because this has been deeply unfair to him, despite his performance. And whether he moves to Alpine is still to be determined because Alpine doesn't know shit. All right, let's do a quick breakdown of how this affects key players. Aston Martin. First up, Sebastian Vettel. Dude just wanted to spend more time with his kids and bees and saving the planet. Not his fault, guys. Was he the inadvertent catalyst for a giant shit show that wreaked havoc all over the paddock? Yes. Was it his fault? No. But that's how he's involved. Well, next up, Lawrence Stroll. Man's always a mover, always a shaker. Got 15-minute increments to execute every item on his agenda, and he does not dawdle. Basically, he had one weekend to get Fernando a seat on his team, and honestly, it wasn't that hard because it was pretty apparent what Fernando wanted. Alpine wouldn't commit to a multi-year contract. They said 1 year with the promise of another if he's performing at the same level, and that wasn't good enough for Fernando, who wanted the loyalty and commitment of a team because that's what he thinks he deserves. And to be honest, at 41 years old, performing at his caliber, he's probably right. The thing is, not many teams necessarily want to commit long-term to an older driver when there's so much fresh talent bobbing around. If they don't know where to find the fresh talent, they can ask Zak Brown. Lawrence, on the other hand, wants a world champion on his team, which was obvious with his move with Seb, and now with Fernando. And Lawrence doesn't really think like in the short term. He's always thinking about the bigger vision. And if he thinks that this is the way to make things happen, he's probably right, because I honestly respect Lawrence Stroll as a businessman. After all, he did bring Michael Kors to Canada. There's no telling what this man could do. And perhaps the only thing hindering Lawrence's business sense is Lance and keeping his son on the team. I don't know how long he'll tolerate Lance holding him back. But at the moment, I think this relationship between Lawrence and Fernando is actually a really good match. They both seem very aggressive and intense and like getting things done. So I think they'll actually work pretty well together. Next up, Alpine. Otmar, man. Otmar is still getting screwed by Lawrence. He left, he tried to go to another team, tried to get as far away from Lawrence as possible, and Lawrence still finds a way to fuck with him. Also, Otmar doesn't seem to know much about anything. Everything's a surprise to him. Fernando leaving, Oscar not driving for Alpine. Otmar clearly wakes up every day as surprised as the rest of us. Poor Otmar, but also get your shit together, Otmar. Fernando Alonso gives zero fucks about anyone or anything, and it's kind of great. He had issues at Alpine. Apparently, there was quite a bit of tension within the team because they wouldn't commit to a multi-year deal. Again, as we've talked about, Alpine's probably vying for fresher talent, assuming Fernando can't perform, and Fernando wants the commitment of a team. But also, Fernando has sort of a reputation for being difficult to work with, leaving teams on bad terms, and just kind of being a drama queen and generally very difficult to work with. But he is a phenomenal driver. Lewis did say he was the best competition on the field, and he still got it at 41. He's basically the J-Lo of F1. Next up, McLaren. So Zak Brown either panicked and is now just randomly shooting his shot with every preteen he can find, or he has a master plan none of us understand. It kind of feels like he's like a poor man's Lawrence with the way these moves are panning out, but I love Zak Brown with all my heart, and I really want to believe that there is something good at the bottom of this, and he's not just being weird with his business choices and just randomly handing out contracts to like 25 drivers for no reason. But time will tell with Zak. We don't really know where he stands. And the other key player is, of course, Daniel Ricciardo, who, to summarize his experience here, is he's basically getting fucked. He could go to Alpine, he could not go to Alpine, but if he does go to Alpine, hashtag bring Cyril back. We need him. Other minor players in this situation, Lando Norris and Esteban Ocon, are just kind of bobbing along, unaffected parties, but like teammates? Question mark. I suppose Lance Stroll falls under that category as well, but honestly, I'm not really sure he understands anything's happening at the moment. And then, of course, there's Oscar Piastri, who's kind of the star of this really bizarre sports drama. Didn't really have to be, though. And just to recap who Oscar Piastri is, his name's been floated around for ages in F1. He was rumored to be replacing Nicholas Latifi earlier this year. So we did hear his name quite a bit at the beginning of the season. He has been at Alpine for years, though, in like their training program and recently as their reserve driver. He's been pretty committed to Alpine, and they've been pretty committed to him. Even like there was even like a clause in the contract that they'd help him find a seat if they weren't able to give him a seat for next year, like all this stuff. So when Alpine announced this, no one was that surprised despite the silence from Oscar. And they were surprised by Oscar's response in return. So still TBD on all of that with Oscar. So there was a lot of funny social media reactions to all of this. Like other teams, Haas, Mercedes made fun of the whole situation. Haas was like tweeted a picture of Mick and Kevin on their phones with like a us too side emoji. Alfa Romeo did a similar thing. Valtteri and Guan Yu looking at the same phone and then just put the popcorn emoji. Another funny response was from Ryan Ayer, who responded to Alpine's press release about Oscar coming and did the Alpine and then the handshaking emoji and Ryan Ayer and then wrote random seat allocation. Fair enough. But the highlight of all of this was Alex Albon, who got his contract renewed with Williams and announced it by writing, "I understand that with my agreement, Williams Racing have put out a press release this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is right, and I have signed a contract with Williams for 2023. I will be driving for Williams next year." Sorry. I loved it. Everyone loved it. Even Oscar loved it, who responded like, "Congrats," and then wrote like, "I see what you did there." So that was really good. Again, cementing the fact that Alex is king of social. And then, of course, revisiting our earlier conversation about Esteban posting the picture of him in a hammock going, "Been off my phone. Anything going on?" All in all, great social media responses. But as we're wrapping up this whole drama situation, these questions are still up in the air. Which of Oscar's contracts will hold? Like, will he drive for McLaren? Will he drive for Alpine? Will he drive for no one? Daniel Ricciardo's future in F1. Is he going to Alpine? Is he going nowhere? Is he done? Be terrible if this was it for him. Again, second seat in Alpine. If Daniel doesn't take it, who's taking it? Will Oscar be like forced to drive for Alpine? Like, what will happen there? Other teams, Zhou Guan Yu has not been confirmed to return to Alfa Romeo, so the second seat there is still up for grabs. Yuki has not been confirmed to return to AlphaTauri, so the second AlphaTauri seat is still up for grabs. Mick's negotiations with Haas were halted, so TBD on whether he's returning there or not. And of course, the second seat at Williams, we don't know if Nicholas Latifi will be returning. What we do know is that Oscar Piastri will not be taking his place, so it's Nicholas Latifi or someone random. Okay, well, that's all the drama I've got for now. I guarantee the moment I publish this, some new crazy twist will happen and we'll be right back where we started. But in the meantime, I hope this drama was enough to tide you over for the summer break. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at BoxBoxF1Pod because I post slightly more live reaction reactions to all the drama that comes up. And keep your popcorn close, guys, because we never know what's going to happen. See you soon. Box.